Of Northeast Indiana is unfamiliar to you, our mission is simple. It's to attract, develop, and retain emerging leaders through community, professional, and social engagement. YLNI is a nonpartisan organization, but we are very invested in community and civic engagement. In fact, we believe it's critical that young leaders get involved in the community that they call home. We encourage public service, and we believe in educating voters the best that we can. Hence what has brought us to tonight's debate. But before we get started, I want to do a few thank yous to recognize those who have helped make tonight possible. The first one is Fort Wayne STV, who has helped step up to the plate to stream tonight's event to the broader community for those who can't make it tonight, so that they can be a part of what is said here on this stage. I also want to thank our moderator. It's not an easy role, and it's not one that is widely accepted. But I want to thank Andy Beckman from WME 97.3 for volunteering to moderate for our event tonight. I would also like to thank 3 organizations that came together with YLNI to help make our committee that put this event together. Those organizations include Fort Wayne College Democrats, College Republicans of Allen County, and Teenage Republicans of Allen County. The 4 organizations collectively have worked together over the past several months to put things together for tonight's debate. Everything from the structure to the format to the topics that were relevant to young leaders, as well as even questions that were offered up from both sides that was important for them to hear the candidates speak on tonight. To help share that story, we have a short 3-minute video we'd like to share with you about those who helped put this organization, this event on. And then I'll hand it over to Andy to go through some of the rules of tonight's debate and introduce the candidates.
YLNI's role in this debate, being a nonpartisan organization, was to reach out to the younger demographic, high school, college-age kids, even our own YLNI constituents from differing viewpoints to come together to have a common goal to educate the city of Fort Wayne.
We all know that when emerging leaders feel engaged and connected to their community, they feel part of the solution, a part of the process, and begin to set roots in a place that they want to call home.
Having open conversations with political opponents is something America needs a little more of right now, and that's why it's been great to work with college Democrats and putting on this debate. We've been having discussions about where they stand with Fort Wayne right now and where they want to see Fort Wayne move in the future. This debate presents an opportunity for the people of Fort Wayne to engage in local politics, educate themselves on the candidates, and when it comes time to step into the voting booth November 5th, they'll be able to make an educated decision on who's best for Fort Wayne moving forward.
One of the main tenets of Fort Wayne College Democrats is to promote civility. We think that having conversations with people of differing opinions is very valuable in today's society, and we think that, by having more conversations with people of differing opinions, we can become a more civil and tolerant society overall. And I think that by promoting those ideas and making sure that our elected officials are held accountable for their positions on certain issues, that we can help promote a better, brighter future for Fort Wayne.
Allen County Teenage Republicans is really just a group designed to join teenagers from all the different high schools in Allen County to learn more about local and state politics and just be involved with the community, especially with the Republican Party. This experience has honestly been fantastic, and it's been awesome to hear about some of the things that College Democrats has been able to accomplish and just the things that they've participated in around Fort Wayne.
YLNI plays an integral role in the success of our community, from engaging with young people to promoting different ideas and events that are going to draw more people to our city. It's a great organization that really helps just develop new ideas and innovative solutions to attract young people and retain them here in our city.
I think Young Leaders of Northeast Indiana has been an impactful group in Fort Wayne, and it's really been awesome having them be the nonpartisan group in planning this debate because they've been able to bring all 3 political groups together.
YLNI plays a huge role in our community, from the YLNI Farmers Market to the Leadership Institute. They do a lot of good things to influence our community in positive ways.
The thing I'm most excited to hear about tonight is the vision that each candidate has for the future of Fort Wayne, and specifically how young people play a role in that future.
One thing I'm excited about tonight's debate is the excitement that this debate will build in the community amongst young leaders to become more educated and to participate in our municipal elections.
I'm very excited to hear about the differences between the candidates and how they plan on making Fort Wayne a better place to live.
I'm excited to hear the conversation back and forth between both candidates, making sure it's civil, it's educational for the public, and just making sure that we're moving Fort Wayne forward and seeing what their visions are.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please, a round of applause for those who helped put tonight's video together and to make events possible, young leaders of Northeast Indiana. My name is Andy Beckman. I work at 97.3 WMEE Radio, and I also am in charge of applause tonight. I'm regulating when you can and can't clap. I am referee. I am nothing more. Many of the questions tonight have come from the young individuals and the groups you saw referenced in the video up before you, and I'm here to facilitate those. Without further delay, let's welcome the candidates to the stage here at the same time. Please welcome with a round of applause Mayor Tom Henry and Mr. Tim Smith. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here tonight and working with this organization to make tonight's event possible. And I'm very excited to get things going. I have a goal here today to stay on time, to get question clarity, and to make sure that we are, well, those are the two. How about that? Before we started, backstage, there was a coin toss that those in the audience need to know. Mayor Henry won that toss and has elected to give the final closing statement at the end of tonight's debate. But before we get going specifically to direct questions, I want to reiterate the goal is to learn about the positions of both candidates, and you may find not only where they differ, but where they are the same. And those instances we are the same, I am team speeding things along, as are the candidates, to get more questions asked this evening, so we may do that. However, that being the case, here is the format. We will have opening statements, then we will get into questions where candidates will have 2 minutes to give their answer. The other candidate will respond, and if rebuttal time is needed, 1 minute will be issued. At that time, we will then move to the next question. Without further delay, I'd like to get things started. Mr. Tim Smith, would you like to give an opening statement of 2 minutes?
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you to YLNI and both the Young Republican and Young Democrat groups. What a phenomenal event and a phenomenal crowd. I asked the mayor if he recalled the largest turnout for an event like this, and I think, Mayor, you said this might be it. So thank you for coming. You could have spent this night any other way, and a special thankful to the groups. Special thanks. So my name is Tim Smith. I'm running for mayor because I expect more out of our city. I expect more out of our administration. Specifically, I expect Fort Wayne to be the safest city in the Midwest, the smartest city, and the most prosperous city in the Midwest. Why safest first? Because if we are not the safest, we will never be the smartest, nor will we be the most prosperous. I actually think I'm one of the luckiest people in Fort Wayne. My wife and I have 5 children between the ages of 22 and 27. All 5 live in Fort Wayne. Those 5 have 5 kids. All of my grandchildren live in Fort Wayne. And better than that, 3 of my daughters are pregnant, and so we're going to have 8 grandchildren in Fort Wayne in short order. I'm lucky. I'm blessed. But one of the reasons I'm running is because most of their friends, my kids' friends, have chosen to leave Fort Wayne for greener jobs, pastures. We send our best and brightest to college. They find bigger jobs, bigger opportunities elsewhere. I'm running for mayor to keep them here because, frankly, selfishly, I want my kids and grandkids to be here until the day I die. That's the community I want to live in. We are not the safest. In fact, there was a report just yesterday on WFFT that we are actually the 41st safest city in the state of Indiana, no less the nation. Smartest is about how we run the government and about education. There's much more the mayor can do and I plan to do with education. And the most prosperous is about job attraction, population, and wages. I'm running for mayor to make this the safest, smartest, and strongest city in the Midwest.
Mayor Tom Henry, your opening statement. 2 minutes.
I too want to thank Wyla and I for giving both Tim and I a chance tonight to not only talk about our differences, but obviously about the areas that we agree with as far as the vision for the city of Fort Wayne. I've been blessed to have been mayor now for 12 years. And I'd like for you to reflect back on where this city was 12 years ago. The changes that have taken place have been as a result of a tremendous amount of effort put out by this community, because this community got sick and tired, quite frankly, of nobody knowing who we are, what we had to stand for as far as a community. Was this, in fact, a good place to raise our children, to send our children to school? Were there really good paying jobs here? And if so, where were they? All of these questions were there 12 years ago. And I submit to you that things have changed significantly. I think in the areas of public safety, my opponent and I will talk about that, I'm sure, later on, but in the areas of public safety, infrastructure, downtown, economic development, city utilities, parks, finance, all of the areas that we mayors measure to determine whether or not our cities are moving in the right direction. Are we, in fact, successful as a community? I think we've hit on all of those cylinders. My hope, my desire is to continue in that role, because we still have a lot yet to do. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we will be getting into the direct questions that were presented to me that I'm facilitating. At this point, when a candidate gives an answer, we're really looking to make sure we have crowd control. So far, you guys are doing great. So no applause until we start to wrap things up at the end of closing statements. So there's a lot of questions here. Let me give you a quick, brief overview of areas where we would go, and some of them were just addressed on the stage. Job future, safety, infrastructure, downtown, neighborhood, electric works, and a little thing called trash collection will be brought up this evening. We will start with this. Job creation and retention is a huge measuring stick for a mayoral office. What is your specific elevator speech, Mr. Tim Smith, as we start with you, to sell Fort Wayne to businesses that are looking to relocate? 2 minutes.
Over the last 40 years, we have lost 40,000 jobs from Fort Wayne. If you've been around a while, you recognize General Electric and International Harvester, and Magnavox had 8,000, and now Raytheon has 600, and Phelps Dodge and Tokheim and Central Soya and Wayne Pump and Fruhoff Trailer. 40,000 jobs, whether high-paying white-collar or high-paying blue-collar. We have not had a large employer choose Fort Wayne since General Motors in the 80s. This is why our younger generations are leaving, because they can find better job opportunities elsewhere. I'm running to keep them here. I actually agree with the Northeast Indiana Partnership and the way Greater Fort Wayne thinks about job attraction in terms of sectors. Here's how I, as mayor, would sell Fort Wayne. We have sectors in which we're strong: defense, specialty insurance, auto supply chain, healthcare. Go a little bit west, orthopedics. I work in specialty insurance. Think Medical Protective, Brotherhood Mutual, Lincoln, Swiss Re. Together, our companies employ 7,000 people and generate annually $7 billion in revenue. Here's the value proposition. Every one of us need the same three things to succeed: data, IT, and analytics. What the mayor needs to do is travel around Fort Wayne, talking to small to mid-sized data, IT, and analytics firms, asking them a question, a simple question. Do you want access to 7,000 trained employees and $7 billion in annual revenue? And they will come. By the way, they'll come without an enormous amount of tax abatements. We try to compete, and it's a good tool, and we should use them, but we try to compete with bigger cities that are doling out hundreds of millions of tax abatements and other kinds of tax credits. We don't have that to offer, so we must win on the merits of the job attraction argument. Businesses will come when they know two things are true. Their money will multiply faster, and their people will be happier. In the way of data, IT, and analytics for specialty insurance, both things are true. They will come.
Mayor Henry, I ask the same question to you. For those in the audience who haven't heard your speech, talk about job creation and how you help attract businesses to the city.
Well, first of all, Tim was right. Over the last 40, 50 years, we did lose about 40,000 jobs in manufacturing, but that many years ago, we were a manufacturing community. We made things. That's what Fort Wayne did. Unfortunately, in the early 1980s, Fort Wayne, along with a lot of other communities in the Midwest, lost most of our manufacturing jobs. Unfortunately, many of them moved to Mexico. But we understood something then, we learned something, and that was we could no longer be a one-horse town. We could no longer be just a manufacturing community. So today we have actually 8 working clusters of jobs. Tim mentioned a couple of those. Insurance is still very, very big in our community. Manufacturing is still a very large contributor. Healthcare is the biggest contributor to our economic base. Hospitality. Even the restaurants that we often make fun of because we have so many, but still try to get a reservation on the weekend. I play the mayor's card and I still can't get one. But hospitality is a huge contributor to our economic base. Education, we have 30,000 students in this community. They contribute immensely to our base. The bottom line is we are now diversified, and that adds to our strength. It's when we totally put our educational base and our employer base together to create a synergy where the degrees and the education your young people get today will not only help our current employers, but our employers of the future.
When it comes to rebuttal, I'd like to add this, Tim Smith. Can you delve into specifics to courting companies and jobs? I understand what the current landscape is, but in 1 minute, what are some of the tactics that you would implement to help bring jobs specifically?
Yeah. I worked, for 25 years, I've worked for one of Fort Wayne's best and most successful companies today, a Warren Buffett-owned healthcare liability insurance company, and I've been privileged to have a bunch of different leadership roles. Here's what I've learned. Businesses will move here when two things are true. It is a specific, Andy. When they believe their money will multiply faster and their people will be happier. If those two things are not true, the businesses aren't coming. Fact, according to the Bureau of Labor Standards, when the mayor was running 12 years ago, we had X number of jobs in the Fort Wayne metro area. 10 years later, we had fewer jobs in the metro area. Not since General Motors, as I mentioned, has a large employer chosen Fort Wayne. We are not the incubator for entrepreneurs that we once were. There was a day when we were spinning off patents for sonobuoys and fuel pumps and electric motors and television tubes. We need to bring our young people back. We need to keep them here so they can continue spinning off new kinds of patents.
Time. Mayor Henry, you have a chance to rebut some of the comments, but also if you could have time, some specific ventures maybe you have planned for the future for jobs on the horizon.
Okay, first of all, we have in fact gained over 9,000 jobs in the past 10, 12 years. We've retained over 20,000 jobs. There's been a migration to the city of Fort Wayne, contrary to a lot of other cities who unfortunately are losing people, we're actually gaining. And a lot of the young people that Tim's talked about who left, they're all coming back. They're coming back by the dozens. And one of the reasons is what we sell the most in the city of Fort Wayne, and that is our quality of life. In my conversations with employers, it's no longer about what kind of financial incentives can you give to me as an employer, tax abatement and creed and incentives and all of this. They don't ask that anymore because every city can give that. What we bring to the table in the city of Fort Wayne is a quality of life, which anymore means so much more to employers because it's their employees that they're really talking about. That's what we have in Fort Wayne, is the quality of life.
We're switching to our second question with the same rebuttal rules and time. This means this one starts with you, Mayor Henry. We're going to be talking about city contracts. Specifically, the one that most are talking about this time of year is trash. The Red River trash pickup contract has been widely discussed among voters and media much of last year, if not longer. What do you see now that you could have done better earlier in that process? And how can voters be assured similar results don't happen on future deals?
You know, it's really unfortunate that this particular contract was one that we've had to struggle with so much. You know, the fact of the matter is, the city of Fort Wayne, being as large as it is, the second largest city in Indiana, the 77th largest city in the country, we actually have thousands of contracts that cross our desks year after year. Most of them work out very well. Every once in a while, we run into a problem situation, and undoubtedly, the Red River contract has been a challenge. But you need to understand why. It wasn't the contract itself. It was the same contract the previous hauler had. City Council went over it, just like I did. They passed it unanimously. I signed off on it. But something hit at the same time as that contract hit. And that was a shortage of drivers with CDL licenses. You all know what a CDL license is. You have to have that to drive certain types of equipment, certain types of vehicles, buses, and so on. The CDL license is required to drive a garbage truck. And not just any kind of CDL license. It has to be a first-class one. The unemployment situation in Fort Wayne is so good right now. We're under 3% unemployment. Everybody competes for everybody. We literally have more jobs than we have qualified people to fill. And that's the situation that Red River found themselves in. We have a lot of construction companies in town that do a wonderful job for our community. We have a lot of other haulers. We have a lot of semi-companies, a lot of organizations that need bus drivers, and they all compete for the same people. And unfortunately, Red River was unaware of that when they took the contract. And they have been unable to retain drivers. And that's been the problem all along. We've been helping them supplement them now recently, and as a result, trash pickup has improved significantly. We're still working with them. The contract's not over. It'll get better. Thank you.
Tim Smith, 2 minutes from your purview, even though you were not directly with the contract when it came through. What is your thoughts about city contracts in general? And then if you'd like to spend time specifically saying what you think could have been done better, improved earlier when it comes to the Red River trash pickup.
Yeah, the problem is not CDL or the number of drivers. New Haven managed to pick it up on time. Huntertown, unincorporated Allen County, within the same county where Fort Wayne had so much struggle, the rest of the city, the rest of the cities, the rest of the county, they've been picking up their trash just fine. The problem is not the number of CDL licensed folks. The problem is it's a horrible contract, and it was a horrible contract when governing the prior carrier as well. In fact, that is a greater indictment on the contract itself. I'm a lawyer, and I oversee the negotiation and signing of a lot of contracts, a lot of big contracts. It's been my primary responsibility for a long time. If someone who worked for me negotiated or worse signed that contract as a lawyer, I would have fired him immediately. This contract does not have a definition for what's called material default. That's a problem. Contracts aren't hard conceptually. I will pay you to do X. If you don't do X, here is my recourse. That's the fundamental nature of every contract. This contract doesn't have a definition for material default. Here's what the mayor should have done, and this is what I'm going to do on January 2nd. The first thing you do is every contract can be reopened by mutual consent. So I'm going to invite Red River back to the negotiating table. If they say no, then I'm going to start imposing the fines to the maximum allowed under the contract, which we can do, and the mayor hasn't. That will force them back to the table because they'll have no choice. At the same time, I'm going to do a search for their replacement, because the single worst thing that could happen is for us to mess it up even further by losing Red River and not having a capable replacement the next day. Once I secure the replacement, I'm going back to Red River. I'm saying this will be the new contract. If you don't like it, you're fired. And we're going to choose a new one. And if Red River decides to litigate, then we'll litigate. But a bad contract passed by a city council and signed by a mayor should not mean the taxpayers have to suffer with trash sitting out for days and weeks.
Mayor Henry, a 1-minute rebuttal.
Well, obviously, my opponent and I differ. And since I'm the one who works with it every day, I think I'm acutely aware as to what the problem is. We've met with Red River several times. Their home office is in Texas. They fly up here. They meet with us. They know that they've got a challenge. And contrary to what Tim says, it is drivers. And it's not just them, it's drivers all over. And again, the good news is, as they compete, the wages go up. But until we can stabilize the workforce, particularly in the driver area, we're going to have some challenges, not only with Red River, but in other areas as well. I have the pleasure of talking to a number of large companies who use all kinds of different skilled laborers and driving among them. And they're having the same kinds of challenges. So you can talk about the contract all you want, Tim, and the previous vendor having a lousy contract, but we had them for 10 years prior to Red River.
Time.
Things are fine.
So the other
1 minute.
The other terrible contract we've executed of late is the contract for the sale of the North River property. In this instance, we, the city, sold the land, and by the way, the mayor gave city council about a week and a half to think about it after the deal was negotiated. We sold the land, and we relieved the seller of all pollution liability. If you've driven past the North River property at all in the last 10, 20, 30 years, just west of Science Central, you know what's been sitting there. And it's likely that it's been polluted. In a commercial deal, if you're trying to secure a loan from a commercial bank for a piece of commercial property, you will never get the loan until the lender is assured there is no pollution. Environmental exposure is one of the greatest risks we have, and yet, we the taxpayers own it right now. We own it. We don't know how bad it is yet. There's a lot of rumors about how bad it is. We don't know. So whether it's a bad trash contract, which has existed for a long time and we're stuck with for 5.5 more years, or a bad North River contract, or a bad negotiation of the city's health insurance, which should have taken place 11 years earlier, contract matters, I will fix it.
This next question is for Tim Smith. We'll start here. So we've started with, jobs, city contracts, and similar to city contracts, we might be staying in the same realm, and I'm aware of it. So if we repeat an issue, I'm ready to move on. Is the relationship that is well publicized between the mayor's office and city council? Given the coin flip, this question goes to you first. Tim Smith, what plans do you have, given what is rumored or at least said to be a troubled relationship communication between the mayor's office and city council? What can you envision fixing, changing, or implementing the way things are structured with your senior leadership position within MedPro?
Yeah. In the last 4 years, the mayor's been to one city council meeting. I'm going to go to city council meetings on a regular basis. Every major project I've been involved with at MedPro has the success or failure of it has been directly linked to how effectively the parties communicate. That's true employee to employee, that's true boss to employee, vendor to company. It's all about communication. It's true in my marriage. It's true raising children. It's all about communication. The distance between the mayor's office and the city council office is actually pretty short. It might be the longest 60 yards in the Fort Wayne area. Phone lines go both ways. I don't lay this all at the mayor's feet, by the way. Hallways go both ways, email both ways, texting both ways. Communication's not hard. You just have to have two willing participants. What we, the taxpayers, want is we just want our elected officials to work together. Frankly, we don't care if they're Republican or Democrat in municipal elections. I think many don't. I don't think plowing snow or filling potholes or negotiating trash contracts is red or blue. Don't think so. I'm going to work with Democrats on city council as well as Republicans on city council. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite all of city council into the budgeting process well in advance. I'm going to invite them into a contract negotiation well in advance. I'm going to invite them into the future strategic planning of the city well in advance. Folks, this isn't hard. Every church, school, civic organization, family, government succeeds or fails based on how well it communicates with the stakeholders. We simply need our city council members and our mayor to pick up the phone and call one another, to walk down the hallway and call one another, to implement common old-fashioned courtesy and not allow party labels to get in the way. That's how I'm going to fix communication.
2 minutes to Mayor Henme. Let me rephrase the question, because one, I might be speculating, but I would like to hear your point of view about a rumored tension between your office and City Council. Much of this spotlight was placed upon because of the Red River contract. So, where do you think the contract and where do you think the communications have broken down, and why?
Unquestionably, there are pieces of legislation that from time to time come across my desk or come across the desks of city council members where we have opposite views. The vast majority of the time, things go through with no problem. But every once in a while, we do come across an issue or two where we do have differing opinions. He talked about Red River. Well, in Red River's case, the council passed it unanimously, and I agreed. So there wasn't any contention there. But there have been occasions. I tried to do some annexation a few years ago, and we had differing opinions, and it ended up not passing. But more times than not, we agree. The times that we don't, I don't have any problem calling council president or calling different council members and asking them why they cast a vote a certain way or why they feel a certain way, and they do contact me as well. But the idea of me, of the mayor, going to every council member, council meeting is ludicrous, because separation of powers were set up by design. The governor doesn't go to the legislative branch when they meet. The president certainly doesn't go to congressional meetings, nor do I go to city council meetings. I'm the executive branch. They're the legislative branch. They should be able to operate freely with the responsibilities that they have, and part of that is the legislative and budgeting processes of the city. We do communicate. Now, we don't always agree, and from time to time, it does make the media that we have a point of contention, but that's to be expected when you have two different bodies of government trying to work with one another. It happens from time to time. You mentioned your marriage. Not all marriages are good all the time.
Because of time, and do you have anything to add, Tim? Because I can set you up for it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what I want to get to specifically is how you have found success when communicating when your opinion isn't the most popular one.
Okay.
When you don't get your way.
Sure. The mayor was first elected in 1983, and I say that as a compliment because anybody who has served for 32 years has my admiration. He's been mayor for 12. There was a 4-year term that he just barely lost, and he's running for 4 more. He's running for his 40th year. And I sincerely respect that. But I think it causes you to think differently. So you're asking specifically how we communicate better to get out of ruts. You do it the old-fashioned way. I've been involved in a lot of deals. The team I lead is 400 people of employees and contractors. Look, it's the old-fashioned way. We're talking about a deal. We sit across the table. I say, what's your position? May I share my position? Here's my issues with yours. What are your issues with mine? You mirror. It's not complicated. And the notion that the separation of powers, which keeps the president out of Congress or the governor out of the state legislature, is applicable in terms of just the day-to-day relationship building, I don't understand. As a guy who's never been in, maybe it's just the perspective of an outsider. I can promise you this, I'm going to talk to the city council all the time. I'm going to show up there on a regular basis.
Mayor Henry, I'm going to get, no, you're good. All right. Let's move on to, I believe Tim is getting this question. So we have a new topic, a new question, right? We talked about jobs. Oh, is that right?
I think it is.
Yeah, because I think we did, yeah. Okay. I'm going to go with Tim.
Okay.
That's what we're going to do. We've talked about a lot of things. One of the things that hasn't been talked about that people want to hear is safety. So we're teeing up safety, okay? Mayor Henry, obviously, we'll get to you in a second. Safety in our city, violent crimes, these numbers have either been reported or inflated, but they are in the news a lot, and they are in the voters' minds a lot. What is your strategy and approach to make Fort Wayne a safer city, as I know it's crux to your campaign, that's different from your opponent's current administration?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 specific ideas. Let me first frame the problem. 46 murders in Fort Wayne last year, 4 yet unsolved, maybe 50. The Journal-Gazette reported last week there are 166 unsolved murders in Fort Wayne just in the last 12 years, and probably a couple hundred more from years prior. We are not the safest city. We are not close. I mentioned in my opening that WFFT just reported yesterday that we are 41st in terms of a ranking of Indiana cities. 6 months ago, a study came out. By the way, these studies look at the number of violent crimes, the amount of property crime, the ratio of the number of officers to the population. 6 months ago, out of the 35 cities, we were 25th. By the way, Gary, a great city with nice people, was 19th. Here are the 3 things I'm going to do to make Fort Wayne the safest city in the Midwest, because as I mentioned, if we are not the safest, we'll never be the smartest nor the most prosperous. The first thing we're going to do is reinstitute community-oriented policing. Neil Moore and our officers did an excellent job in the 90s. It simply means this. Officers are assigned smaller geographic territories. They park their cars. They meet the residents. They meet the businesses. They build relationships. Relationships yield trust. Trust yields witnesses, and witnesses are what we need to solve crimes, because oftentimes we know who the bad guys are. The witnesses won't testify because they don't feel like they have trust and relationship with the officers. We're going to reinstitute community-oriented policing. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to have more officers on the street. We might hire some. We will definitely move some from behind desks to traffic or detective positions. I've asked 75 officers how we can be the safest in the Midwest and not spend more money, and almost all of them have said the same thing. We're top-heavy. We can move back to front room. And finally, compensation. We're the second largest city in this state, and we pay our officers in the mid-40s. Folks, our officers can drive 45 minutes and get $10,000 raises. We have to fix that. We want to treat the people who work hard every day better.
Mayor Henry, can you share specific things your administration has done to address the issue of violent crime?
I'll make sure I say it in the time frame.
Well, we give you 5 seconds extra. And so hang on, before you start the timer. Specific things you have done, but you will do. Violent crimes, go ahead.
First of all, we've done a significant amount of work in the police department over the past 12 years, and Tim is not quite correct in some of his numbers. First of all, as far as the city of Fort Wayne violent crimes, we have the lowest violent crime average right now in the city of Fort Wayne that we've had since 1988. Lowest average violent crime rate is the lowest since 1988. That's something we need to really think about for a second when you ask how safe is this city. Quite frankly, if you're not involved in guns, gangs, or drugs, this is an extremely safe community for the rest of us. However, if you choose to go down one of those avenues, one or more of those, you're probably going to get hurt. Yes, we had 46 homicides last year. This year, it's less than half of that. In fact, since January of this year, 75% of our crimes have been cleared. All crimes, not just violent crimes. 75% of all crimes in this community since January have been cleared. Why? Because we put into place, actually, we've continued the COPS program. The COPS program hasn't gone away. We just quit having beat cops walking up and down streets because they got too far away from their cars, and if there was an emergency, they couldn't get back in time. But we still have COPS programs. In fact, we have more so than ever. Our police officers go to neighborhood association meetings, they go to partnership meetings, they have cookies with the cop, they have coffees with the cop, they have all kinds of activities and school programs and so on. So we're more active than ever. My friends, we have a tremendously safe community, no matter what anybody says.
I'm going to give you a chance, Mr. Smith, to rebut some of what he said, because safety is a big issue. But if time allows, I would also like to, if you could, to incorporate ways in which you think the mayoral office, because this comes from parents, this next part is safety, when it comes to school safety.
Yep. Look, in the last 3 months, we've had shootings at a Kroger inside. A year and a half ago, a murder at a Meijer on the northwest side. A shooting that began in the streets that ended at the zoo. Crime is not isolated in this city. We have to do better. And I'm glad you asked about our kids in schools. Our kids walk to school today on sidewalks that are broken. I talked to a neighborhood association president 2 weeks ago. There was a sidewalk that had a 15-inch offset. She said when it was dark in the winter, a 6-year-old girl tripped, broke her arm. We have to do better by our kids, getting them to school and from school. And while they're in school, here's what we're going to do. The worst headline that Fort Wayne will ever have is Columbine or Noblesville. And so when I'm mayor, we will have not 1, 2 fully uniformed officers or SROs in every school, public and private, K through 12, and they will be there from the moment the first light is switched on till the last light is switched off. That's how we're going to keep our kids safe.
Mayor Henry, the same question to you. I'm going to give you a chance to rebut it, but if you can incorporate school safety into your response, it would be great, even though I know we sort of drifted a little bit there with Tim into infrastructure.
Well, school safety unquestionably is something that, unfortunately, because of the situation in our country today, is becoming more and more of a challenge for all of us. My administration works on a regular basis with Fort Wayne Community Schools, primarily. Superintendent Robinson and I meet on a regular basis to talk about all kinds of subjects, including safety. That's why we have SROs, resource officers in the schools. Many of them are either current or retired police officers. We worked with them on their security systems as far as allowing who can get into the schools and who can't. There's no question we have extra patrol cars that go around the schools, especially in the evening when there's athletic programs going on. So to the extent that government can get involved in the educational process, and there's a thin line there because education has its own governing board, has its own superintendent. But it's imperative that a communication program takes place between the two of us.
Mayor Henry, actually, believe it or not, if you wouldn't like, please stay standing, because the next topic actually starts with you. Because of this great event and this great evening, let's take a minute of levity. We've had some deep issues here, some of which were on the voters' minds for some time. So I appreciate your response. But this event is put together by young leaders of Northeast Indiana. So we've teed one up for our young people and engaging them in our communities. Getting young people in our community involved and retaining them here is big for folks everywhere for the continuation of our city. Can you give me specific roles, either within city government or in your administration, you see engaging the young voice?
About 11 years ago, I went to a high school senior class to give a talk to the government class. And as I was querying them about different subjects, a young lady said to me, "Mayor, does it really matter? Do you really care about what we have to say?" Well, that hit home because I remember asking the same question when I was a senior in high school. Who really cared about what we had to say? So right after that, I started the Mayor's Youth Commission. And it's been in effect ever since. And every year, we draw in students from all of the high schools in the area. They actually have to apply and get interviewed. Eventually, we come up with a class of about 24 students representing these high schools. And that I actually have a person assigned to working with them. She's here this evening. And they meet and they talk to division directors. They talk to the chief of police. They talk to the fire chief. They talk to members of my administration as far as finance. They actually have projects that they themselves put together. They get involved in the community. Why are we doing all of this? Because they are the next leaders of this city. And we want them to stay. And the more involved you get in something, the more you believe in a cause, the more apt you are to stay in that community and to get involved in that community. Leadership is what it's all about. and to be able to position young people to take leadership roles is absolutely our responsibility.
I actually don't think that our next generation are tomorrow's leaders. I think they're today's leaders. My kids are 22 to 27. I hire young folks all the time. At my employer, we have 1,000 employees, and we have young people in many different positions of leadership. Why? There's two reasons. One, because they're good and smart and creative. Two, because being young folks, they think differently than the rest of us. That diverse view brought by the new younger generation makes for a better product, a better service, a better organization. So young people are not tomorrow's leaders. Young people are today's leaders. Here's the way at MedPro we do it. We have nearly 50 interns some years. We drive within 3 hours of Fort Wayne to almost every university, and we recruit interns. And when we bring them, we show them all that Fort Wayne has to offer. And we absolutely have more things to offer today than we had 10 years ago. And I give Graham Richard credit for that. I give our civic leaders credit for that. Absolutely, the quality of place stuff matters. No question, we show them those things. But what we show them mostly, and what they mostly care about, is a career path. Young folks want promoted faster than people of my generation and the older. And so we show them a career path with an entry-level spot, and a couple years later something else, and a couple years later something else. We show them what their salary is on day one, which has to be competitive, and what it can be in year 4 and year 8 and year 12. So how do we incorporate young folks into leadership? We install them in positions today, whether it's government or civic or educational or corporation today, because they are smart, they are creative, they are hardworking, they bring different perspectives. We don't wait till tomorrow, we do it today. And it's not patronizing, it's actually in the best interest of the organization. And when we have openings, because we've had a good internship program, we just hire somebody right in. Any healthy organization functions like that.
Mayor Henry, would you have, no?
That's fine.
I'd like to move on then to budget. And that will start with Tim Smith, which is a little unfair because you didn't write it. So
not unfair.
It is budget season with the current administration, and Mayor Henry will get to yours. But based on what you know, I think there's been increased funds given to infrastructures and neighborhoods. What can you share for your vision of what you understand your opponent's budget is, and how would it be different from what you would like to put money towards for our city?
Yeah. Well, let's be clear about what's happened with our infrastructure budget. Not quite 10 years ago, the mayor took from the city council members $450,000 a year, which they were assigned for infrastructure projects and other projects. 10 years-ish, 450,000, $4.5 million times 7, because the at-large shared one, you're talking about $30 to $40 million that have been taken out of infrastructure over the last 10 years. So the notion that in the last 2 years we've had a great awakening and now we're focused on spending infrastructure is due in large part because we starved our infrastructure in Fort Wayne for the last 10 years. I've knocked on over 10,000 voter doors. Some of our sidewalks are horrible. We have alleys that if you drove a sedan down, the valleys where the tires are so rutted that you're going to bottom out your oil pan. We have neglected our infrastructure forever. We have to do more. Here's the thing that I'm going to do with the budget. You might hear the mayor say this isn't possible with government. It's absolutely possible. In fact, that's precisely the reason we have to do it. I'm going to implement zero-based budgeting for the government. Just like zero-based budgeting works in private America, it works with the government. Here's the way it works. Every department head is called in front of the mayor, ultimately city council after the budget's created, and must justify every expenditure he or she wants to make. And if not justified, we get rid of it. Now, of course, there are things like police salaries, which serve as a starting point, but it does force you to rethink even the fundamentals of the police department. Through zero-based budgeting, we will save a lot of money. When Graham Richard was mayor, he did something called process improvement, or Six Sigma. He wrote a book about it. He tells a story about going into a closet and finding shelves of street lamp light bulbs. He said, "Why do we have so many light bulbs?" And the answer was, because we've got a lot of street lamps. He cut the inventory and saved taxpayers $300,000 to $500,000 a year through simple process improvement and zero-based budgeting.
Mayor Henry, can you share your vision and maybe better explain the budget you just released? And are there any areas you believe in the future are underrepresented? Maybe you wish you had more allocation for?
This particular year's budget is probably one of the best budgets I've seen in all my years in politics. And I say that because we've been able to address areas of citizen concern to the extent that we haven't been able to in quite some time. First of all, we had to identify and prioritize what were the main areas of concern. We came up with 3. Public safety was one, infrastructure was one, and parks. Our citizens wanted to feel safe, they wanted to have good roads to drive on, and they wanted to have an award-winning park system that we've all become accustomed to. And our whole budget revolves around those. We are going to hire 15 more police officers next year, which incidentally is more than the complement that we currently have. We have the highest amount of police officers we've ever had. We have full complement right now. No administration's ever been able to do that. Not only do we have that, we're going to hire 15 more. We're going to hire 20 more firefighters. This year, we spent $30 million on infrastructure, on streets and roads and curbs and sidewalks and ADA ramps and alleys. Alleys for the first time ever in the history of the city. $30 million. Next year, we're going to spend $33 million. Are we addressing infrastructure problems in this city? You bet. When I became mayor in 2008, we were spending $7 million a year. We're spending 4 to 5 times that now. In our parks, I hope we've all had a chance to visit Promenade Park. That is what we can do when we take the time and the effort and the money to put forward to give us an award-winning park system that we've all been used to and the accolades that we receive because of that commitment. But our whole budget centers around those 3 areas. Everything else, not so much, because they haven't changed more than 2%.
A chance for a 1-minute rebuttal on some of the numbers, figures, and vision of budget allocation and infrastructure.
Yep. We have 5 fewer firefighters today than we did 12 years ago. We have added, on average, 3 new police officers per year each of the last 12 years. We barely are keeping up with retirements and disability. Barely on the police side. On the fire side, we're actually not. I'm glad we're prioritizing safety. Finally, we should have done it long ago. It is job 1 of the mayor, and the safety of children is job 1A of the mayor. The budget process has to be overhauled. We have to do it differently. We have to take a business-centric, business-like approach, or we will continue doing it the way we've always done it. 5 fewer firefighters, barely more police officers. The FBI tells cities roughly how many officers they should have based on population and density. Folks, after the officers the mayor just mentioned, we are still 25% below the FBI's recommended average. We have to do better by our overworked and underpaid officers and firefighters.
Mayor Henry, would you like a 1-minute rebuttal, or would you like a new question?
Oh, just a comment. As I listen to Tim's budget theory, reminds me of the CEO that goes to his accountant and asks the accountant, what's 2 plus 2? And the accountant says, what do you want it to be? And that's essentially what we're talking about with Tim's budget. You can't just say, I'm going to do zero-based budgeting. You can't do zero-based budgeting in municipalities. Every major CPA firm in the country will tell you does not belong in municipalities. There's too many other variables. A city is not a business. Businesses are built for profit. Our cities are built for service.
Mayor Henry, please stay standing as we get to the next question. This has to do with experience. Mayor Henry, with this being your potential 4th term as mayor, maybe some naysayers say 3 terms is enough and there's a reason we have term limits. What do you say to those critics?
I guess my question goes back to the old question that's been asked several times. Do you feel better off today than you did 12 years ago when I first became mayor? we have had a cadre of individuals working behind the scenes to make this city all that it can be. Again, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, we were dormant for so long. This city sat back, not realizing the potential that we had as a community. We never realized that we could be the talk of the state. When I go out and meet with other mayors, and I get a chance to meet with them on a pretty regular basis, they don't talk about Indianapolis anymore and what Indianapolis has to offer. They talk about Fort Wayne. They talk about Parkview Field. They talk about Promenade Park now. They talk about the fact that we have won one award after another after another. The most livable city, the best run city, 3 years in a row. Best place for millennials to locate, the best city to retire. These are all awards that we have won just in the past couple years. The lowest cost of living city, the best real estate market. I could go on and on. That's why I'm running again. I was very blessed to be a part of making all this happen. We still have so many more things we can do. We have so much potential in this community. I'd like to continue to be a part of it.
Mr. Tim Smith, obviously the similar experience question comes to you. What do you say to those critics who ask, is Tim Smith qualified to be mayor given his lack of government experience?
Well, it is true that I'm not running for my 40th year in office. That's true. I actually think term limits are a good idea. We don't have them here. Most places across the country don't have them. But I think they're a good idea because cycling fresh people through with new ideas and diverse backgrounds helps any organization. It helps you think differently. The mayor is running for his 40th year. I'm running for my first. I'm bringing 25 years of business leadership to the city of Fort Wayne. I think differently. I've been involved in mergers and acquisitions ranging from $30 million to $800 million. I lead a team of 400 people that's spending $50 million on a massive project to overhaul the way we do business. It's a big data science project, which might not mean much, except it's exactly where the city of Fort Wayne needs to go. From a data and informatics perspective, we need to think differently about how we do government. Envision the homepage of the city website with a simple pie chart. This is how much money we take in, this is how much we spend. Who gets it? Which vendors are getting it? Imagine the opportunity to see which houses were missed for trash today. That's easy in the world of big data. It's easy. The government needs to be far more transparent in how we perform. The mayor is right when he says government is a service organization. Yep. What we haven't done as a government, and I humbly suggest it's because we don't have enough outside blood coming through to think differently. What we haven't done is we haven't looked inward, asked, how can we improve fundamentally, and then how can we tell our people more transparently, the citizens, the voters who put us in, how we're doing. You should know exactly how many houses are missed, exactly how long the pothole has been unfilled, exactly how many unsolved murders we have and from which year. You should know those things. This is your government. An outside perspective makes that a more keenly adopted notion.
Mayor Henry, a chance to respond.
I just thought I'd let Tim know we already have a web page that does that. If you go to cityoffortwayne.org, our entire inner workings are on our web page. You can actually go into our checkbook and see who we wrote checks to. We're probably the most transparent municipal government that has ever been in the city of Fort Wayne. We do that by design because it's your city. So any contract you want to look up, any vendor you want to look up, any ordinance you want to look up, any amount of money as far as spent, the amount of money that was coming in, that's already there. All you got to do is pull it up on the internet, Tim.
Mr. Tim Smith, a minute.
Yeah. Well, it is there, but it's just really hard to find. That's my point. When you come from business, you know that you have to make it simple for your customers to find and analyze. It's there. It's just hard to find. By the way, the Consolidated Annual Financial Report, the CAFR, is also there in its hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. I'll bet I'm the only person outside the administration who's tried to read it. Good luck. It's all there, Mayor. It's just super hard to find. And what I'm suggesting is we have to make it easier as a government. We must be more transparent as governmental leaders so our people can hold us more accountable. That's what's missing. And by the way, I hope we talk about vendors and campaign finance reform, because the check register that the mayor just mentioned is available, and you can go out and query every vendor in the city, find out exactly how much money they've received over the last 12 years, and you can look at campaign finance reports to learn how much they've donated to political candidates. We need more transparency in every way.
We're going to switch to question and rebuttal. As that started to keep getting heated, we want to save that for closing arguments, because I think there's some thoughts to pick up there. But I want to stay on time. We've been talking for an hour, and I'd like to see if we can't wrap a couple things up and move things faster. Electric Works. Economic development incentives, Electric Works, things like that. Mr. Smith, in your mind, what is the best use for future economic development incentives? And can you provide examples?
Yeah. Well, look, I've been pro-Electric Works from the beginning. Publicly and privately. I think Electric Works is the natural outcropping of what Mayor Richards started when he started Parkview Field. I mean, it's literally a logical consequence. It's good. I've been pro-Electric Works from the beginning. The deal is about 2/3, 1/3, about 2/3 public money and about 1/3 private money. I have said from the beginning what Electric Works has done for this community, I think more than anything else, short of what the project will be, is it's forced us to consider two things. The proper ratio of public to private funds, I think it's too high. Public, not enough private. And jobs. Why jobs? Because it's 1.2 million square feet. Phase A and B, both sides, east and west of the road. Both phases. Our commercial space in all of downtown is just a few million more than that. Folks, we haven't brought a large employer in since the 80s. Lincoln has just vacated a bunch of floors on one of their buildings. We have to fill 1.2 million square feet. Now, just before this event, Electric Works issued a press release along with the mayor talking about the leases that we've signed. And there's a sentence in there about how many of them are coming from outside of Allen County. And I can't wait to see the list, because the names listed were from Allen County. Maybe new entities, but they're from Allen County. It does us no good to move a business from the northeast side or the southwest side into downtown. We could move my business, it's 35,000 square feet, from St. Joe Center and Reed downtown, and it's going to create just a horrible eyesore. And we've done that recently with some of the businesses that have moved downtown. I love downtown. I'm a fan of downtown. We're going to develop downtown even faster, but we're going to do it differently. We're going to fund it with the corporation's money who will be moving to Fort Wayne in the future, because the tools that the mayor has had in the toolbox for the last 12 years are largely gone. The money is gone.
Mayor Henry, a chance to answer the question regarding economic development incentives that are used to spur development in our city. Electric Works is one that comes to mind. What do you find are the best use for future economic development incentives, and can you provide more examples?
Well, if we talk about Electric Works specifically, it's actually been a tremendous compilation of a lot of organizations working together. Federal government, state government, the County of Allen, the City of Fort Wayne, the private sector, investment groups. All of us have come together trying to put together an initiative, the biggest initiative ever looked at in the City of Fort Wayne. 1.2 million square feet. That's bigger than Glenbrook. But slowly, they've been filling that space up. But there's one key element that they're struggling with right now, and that's the reason it's taken a while. It's not that nobody's been working. There's all kinds of activity going on behind the scenes. The biggest challenge they have right now is an anchor tenant. Just like Glenbrook Mall, just like Jefferson Point and other malls, you've got to have one or two anchor tenants, 100,000 square feet or more, because that will give the word out to everybody else that it's good enough for this large corporation, it's good enough for me, and people start coming in. Problems that we're having right now is a lot of the smaller groups have come in, but they haven't been able to secure an anchor tenant. That's where the challenge is right now. So we've got individuals, Greater Fort Wayne, our Chamber of Commerce, and others flying all over the country, trying to secure that one or two large tenant. Then everything will begin to go. But the city of Fort Wayne has about $65 million set aside. We have an escrow waiting to be invested in that once all of that mix gets put together. Tim's right, we did request as many jobs as possible come from outside Fort Wayne, Allen County. We don't want to move around either. It doesn't accomplish anything. So there's also a push for that as well. But if you get a big anchor tenant and others coming in, that will happen.
Mr. Tim Smith, a minute to reply.
Yeah, when I said in my intro that I expect more from Fort Wayne, this is one area where I expect more. The mayor just said their problem, the Electric Works developers' problem. Folks, it is our problem. This project is our project. The mayor's job is to go out and recruit, to help bring the businesses to town. Look, in the best possible running city, because the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce are doing such a fantastic job leading and attracting, our developers are getting all the tenants they need. It's not their problem, it is our problem, and it is the mayor's job to lead. This is why I expect more out of our city administration. That's true for Electric Works, it's true for the Landing, it's true for the Ash Center, every project we have. It is the mayor's job to be the job attractor in chief. It isn't GFW's or the Northeast Partnerships, it's the mayor's job. It's not their problem.
Mayor Tom Henry, would you like your minute?
I guess my only comment is I thought that's what we paid them to do. We give Greater Fort Wayne $250,000 a year to help you go out and attract new businesses to come into to Fort Wayne to consider us as their new home. That's what we pay them to do. That's why we pay the Northeast Area Partnership tens of thousands of dollars to do the same thing. Their job is to travel around the country, and in some cases around the world, to try to sell the city of Fort Wayne. It's not the mayor's job. Our job is to put the people and organizations in place to do that. That's what an executive does. Executive is to put together, his job or her job is to put together the right team to attract jobs, to retain those jobs, and to grow those jobs.
All right, I've got 2 questions left, and they will go fast, because on this one, I just need 2 minutes from each of you. I don't believe it's set up for a bunch of rebuttal. First 100 days is a great political term. They like to talk about it with presidencies. Mayor Tom Henry, obviously you've been in office for a while, but given your new term, what do you see the first 100 days, once you take the oath of office again, your priorities?
My first 100 days, we'll try to put into place the foundation for my vision for the next 4 years. And that's going to center around primarily healthcare, because, my friends, we do have some real healthcare challenges in this community. We smoke too much. There's too much obesity. There's too much type 2 diabetes. There's too much infant mortality. And those are areas that we can partner with our healthcare organizations to be able to help educate and treat a lot of those challenges in the healthcare arena. We have challenges in our environment. Right now, we rely primarily on fossil fuels for energy consumption. And fossil fuels are probably going to be here to stay, at least for some significant period of time. But we need to look at other alternative forms of energy. We have the ability to do solar energy in this community. We have the ability to do waste to energy. In fact, we already are. We have several buildings, city buildings right now that we're using human waste and convert it to methane to power those buildings. We can do more of that. We need to take a look at the arts community. We have the ability right now to create one of the best art campuses in the entire Midwest. We need to continue to work on that. Our trail system. Our goal right now, statewide, is to move our trail system here from Pokagon State Park in Angola down to Wabash State Park in Bluffton. We've already done 100 miles. We still have a ways to go. And finally, education and employer partnerships. We need to continue to work on that synergy. That's what I'm going to be doing during the first 100 days, is establishing that foundation.
Mr. Tim Smith, describe for voters what you envision your first 100 days to be like, your priorities.
Yep. Zero-based budgeting, we're going to look at every expenditure anew. $240 million, all of it. Zero-based regulation. We are going to look at every regulation anew and unchain our businesses so they can be more successful, more profitable, so their employees can be happier. Zero-based budgeting, zero-based regulation. I might be, in addition to be the only person who's been reading the CAFR, I might be the only person who's read the city code, maybe except for the city attorneys, Mayor, I hope. There are regulations in the Fort Wayne City Code that have existed before I was born. I didn't print it out because I didn't have enough paper. But we need to eliminate regulations, streamline regulations, so we are the easiest city in the Midwest in which to do business. I said earlier, businesses will come when they believe their money will multiply faster and their people will be happier. Part of money multiplying faster is if we are the least regulated, sufficient to protect our folks, but otherwise the least regulated to unchain our businesses. I'm going to ask, that's the first two things. The third thing is I'm going to ask every department head to tell me what utopia looks like for their department. Utopia in parks, utopia in water and sewer, and at the same time I'm going to ask them what other cities in America have achieved something close to utopia as you envision it, and how did they do it? Again, when you're from business, you think differently. You think best practice. We talk best practices all the time at my employer. I'm going to ask the department heads, tell me what utopia looks like, and show me 3 cities in America or anywhere in the globe who have done it. Employing best practices is how we become the best. And then I'm going to look at our leadership team, folks. Mine will be the most diverse, inclusive leadership team that Fort Wayne has ever seen because of the power of diversity. We're going to change that.
Mr. Smith, please stay standing because I have a very unorthodox question as our final question before we set up closing statements, and it comes from young leaders of Northeast Indiana and the groups that helped put together these questions, and I find it very interesting to receive it. Given the negativity that people feel around politics nationally, I'm going to ask you in 1 minute, can you give at least one compliment to Mayor Tom Henry?
Yeah, I'm really glad you ended here. It's not hard at all. I've said twice that I respect the mayor for his longevity, and that is sincere. I hope it didn't come off as backhanded. It is sincere, Mayor. I do appreciate it. Anybody who has served a long time in public service when they probably could have been making more money doing something else absolutely has my respect. I think the mayor has been an excellent steward of Fort Wayne resources. He is a joyful leader who clearly likes his job. He's a great PR guy. I think he has the best interests in Fort Wayne in mind. That's easy for me. The division and divisiveness in Washington, D.C. is so antithetical to what we should be in Fort Wayne, it's not even funny. I said earlier that municipal politics aren't red or blue. I believe that. I think there's more the mayor could have done with city council. We talked about that. But he's right-minded. I will be right-minded, not red and blue.
I appreciate that. Mayor Tom Henry, the same. Can I give you 1 minute to give a compliment to Mr. Tim Smith?
Sure, and that's also very easy. Tim came to my office a couple of years ago. I didn't know Tim. Tim didn't know me. He asked for an appointment because he wanted to learn a little bit more about the political arena, that he had an interest. And if I can squeeze time in, I meet with a lot of different people who have expressed an interest to serve on boards or commissions or committees or elected office. So Tim and I met. On that very first day, he did show me a tremendous amount of passion for wanting to do something else beyond his career, to add something else to his portfolio of service to the community. Actually, at the end of the meeting, I said, Tim, I think you'd be a great city councilman.
And here I am.
And he obviously didn't take my advice. But that passion in the last 2 years, and we've met from time to time, hasn't left. And that's what it takes if you're going to be involved in public service, because you're right. It's not for the money. It's to serve your fellow man. So thank you for taking that opportunity.
Thank you.
All right, we are getting set now for closing statements, and I remind the audience, who's been awesome, that we will not applaud until the end. Mr. Tim Smith, a couple minutes, closing thoughts.
I'm running for mayor to make Fort Wayne the safest, smartest, and most prosperous city in the Midwest. We talked a lot about safety. We haven't talked as much about smartest on the educational side. We talked about smartly managing the government better with zero-based regulation and budgeting. We're going to do all that. But on the education side, the mayor said earlier that there's constitutional separations. Education is controlled by school board. True. But a mayor that doesn't think education is of supreme importance from the mayor's chair is missing it. I am going to focus a lot on education. We're going to make it safe for our kids to and from school. We talked about that. While in school, we talked about that. But we're going to do a better job of connecting our schools and our employers. We're going to create FortWayneApprenticeship.com. When you go to the website, the only thing you see on the homepage is be a plumber, make 60 grand, click here. Be an electrician, make 65 grand, click here. And when you click there, you simply see all the currently available union, non-union apprenticeship programs. We need to feed our manufacturing facilities. I'm going to work more closely with our schools, encouraging them to do more with trades. I was with the 4 superintendents just last week. They told me that it was 20 years ago we took shop class and home ec out of our schools. I think the mayor can and should encourage them. Yes, it's their decision, but it's the mayor's job, representing all the population, to make it happen. Safest, smartest, and most prosperous. We will bring new jobs to Fort Wayne as we did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We will spin off patents like sonobuoys and electric motors and fuel pumps and television tubes. We will become the incubator for entrepreneurs across the entire Midwest. Fort Wayne's economy will be what it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when we were leading the Midwest in all kinds of areas. I'm running to make Fort Wayne the safest, smartest, and most prosperous city in the Midwest.
Mayor Tom Henry, a chance for 2 minutes to give some closing thoughts.
Thank you. I'd like to be a little unorthodox, and rather than continue to try to give you reasons for allowing me another 4 years, what I'd like to do is take my couple of minutes and spend them thanking you. Because really, if it wasn't for the citizens of Fort Wayne, no mayor, no city council member, no county commissioner, no county council member, no elected official could do their job effectively. I've mentioned several times tonight that I've been with you as your mayor for the past 12 years, and I don't think there's any question that the momentum in this city is phenomenal. There's a sense of excitement no matter where you go in our community. And for those of us that do get around different parts of Fort Wayne, it's everywhere I go. People are proud of our city. That pride wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you. You're the ones who sit on the boards, on the commissions, on the committees, on the neighborhood associations, on the school boards, in the PTAs, on the church boards. There's a whole litany of organizations out there that all of you either are on directly or in some cases indirectly, perhaps your spouse or a friend, but that you share ideas with. But that's what makes community. That's why we've done so well. And that's why I'm firmly convinced that we'll continue to do well into the future, because Fort Wayne is not finished yet. We want to continue to be the envy of our state. So again, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please, a round of applause for our candidates this evening, Mayor Tom Henry and Mr. Tim Smith.
Thank you again for being such a great audience tonight. A couple of things. Registration deadline to vote is October 7th. It's on the back of this brochure on where to do that if you are unaware. And please take this enthusiasm out to your friends and family November 5th. Let's have a record year of turnout for voters this year. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Excellent job all around.
Have a pleasant evening, and again, a round of applause for the candidates and for those involved with young leaders of Northeast Indiana, teenage Republicans, college Republicans, and Fort Wayne College Democrats. I'm Andy from 97.3 WMEE. Have a pleasant evening.